In today's episode of the Holy Fuck Soap Opera, 8 weeks have passed after the breakup, and Krista discusses how her and Rico Suave got assistance from a past life counselor to heal the energetic ties and past life karma that have been preventing them from gaining closure on their relationship. Katherine also talks about experiencing grief after discovering her past life experience and lineage. Welcome to Holy Fuck. Holy Fuck. Holy Fuck. Two gals on the prowl for enlightenment, sex, and all things holy. Holy Fuck. Each week, beauty alchemist and transformational coach and speaker, Katherine McClelland, and spiritual healer and life coach, Krista Kim, discuss navigating spiritual consciousness in a real human body. Stumbling through dating, relationships, and everyday life, all while maintaining a fucking sense of humor.
Okay. Hey, Krista.
Hey, Katherine.
How are you, honey?
I'm actually really, really good.
She's really, really good.
I'm shiny and sparkly. And
she is a little shiny and sparkly today.
Way clearer than I've been in the last couple months. So lots shifting in my energetic body.
I so thought you were going to say lots of shitting.
Shitting. That's funny that you say that because I was thinking of this joke the other day, and it was like something about my chakras are pooping and they can't get up, because it just feels like that's what's been happening in the last 2 months. It's like my chakra system has just been expelling all kinds of craziness.
Crap. Like you're clearing your chakra system. That's fantastic.
Yes.
That opens us to the higher 5 chakras that I've been now studying. So the 7 are in our bodies, and then the 5 are outside our bodies. So as soon as we clear the ones in our bodies, we get to have more fun out there. And I know we're speaking of out there today.
Oh, yes, we are. We're going to take you guys into territory that
is maybe unusual.
Yes. You might go, what? Or it might resonate with you and be like, yes, I totally know what they're talking about.
So here's what we're going to ask from you for this show is if you're curious about all this talk, stay open. See what we might have for you. See what might resonate, even if in the beginning it starts sounding a little
woo, woo, woo,
woo. It is getting towards I was going to say Valentine's Day, but I meant Halloween. Okay, yes. So let's get started.
Well, okay. So we should let them know it has really been probably 8 weeks since the breakup
in the
podcast.
Physical world.
In the physical world.
8 weeks.
Yeah. So that was the last time I talked about that relationship with I never did name him.
No?
So, but I mean, not even like a funny name, but I always wanted to call him like Rico Suave or something.
Yeah,
but,
we did call him Rico Suave for a while.
Yeah. But the last 8 weeks have been so healing, and I haven't been ready to talk about them because so much has been shifting and changing that I was like, where is this going? And we've had a lot of other topics that we needed to or wanted to discuss that were important. So
we've taken a couple detours.
Lots of detours. So I don't even know how to start the story because it does feel like so much has happened. But there was 4 weeks after the breakup where Rico and we didn't talk. We really gave each other space and didn't have much communication, which was great. Then we've spent the last 4 weeks reconnecting and trying to heal what had happened. And for those who maybe haven't listened to the breakup podcast, that episode was about my then boyfriend coming back from school from a 2-week vacation, and he had cheated on me. And so it was a very devastating episode and a very devastating thing to have happened in my life.
Yeah, experience. It was a big one.
Big experience. And so the last 8 weeks has been about me really diving in and not blaming him, but really looking at my part and how I've created this experience in my life for my benefit.
Okay, so I'm going to stop 1 second. I'm going to say, you did blame him for a while. I just mean like for our listeners, let's be clear. The reason there's been a little silence here is because when we're in a process, when we're unwinding something, we're actually not going to do it really well in the beginning. We're going to go through all of the human levels of reactivity. We're going to go through all the stages of grief. We're going to be angry. We're going to bargain. We're going to scream and shout. We're going to go through all of it. And what Krista's saying is she didn't actually believe, quote unquote, that was the truth of what the end result of this experience was going to be, but she had to let herself physically go through this in the world on the feeling level so that she could express and experience that and then be ready to take it to the next level, which is the chakra level and the spiritual level, which is also still physical healing, but it comes from a different space. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I just want to make sure you know, yes, we had some crying.
We had lots of crying and screaming and anger and all of those
and really bad texts.
Oh,
some
yeah.
Bad texts.
There was some really bad texts between him and I that were painful. And what we both have talked about is all of how similar our places of healing are. And so when those bad things were happening between us, we were both getting the message loud and clear that it wasn't about the other person, that it was about our individual healing journey.
Which is a huge thing, everyone, that we want you to really hear is that anything that triggers something inside us, what our position on that is it's ours. Because we've all had a day when something big has happened and you've been in a great place and it meant nothing to you and it just washed right over you and you were able to handle it. And then the same thing or something similar happened at a different time when it triggered some big reaction in you because there was a sensitivity.
Right.
So that's where we're starting from is everything is ours.
And so basically what happened with us is after he kind of came off the high of his class that he'd gone to and started grounding himself and coming back down to earth a bit, he started to realize his patterns. And as I was understanding mine, and we were having some conversations of what is it about us that we cannot stay away from each other? Meaning we were both in physical pain at the separation of being apart. And what was crazy about that is that in my mind at that time, he had done all of that behavior.
Bad boy.
And had hurt me and had done all that. So why does he get to miss me? Why does he get to physically miss me if he did that? So that was part of my story.
He deserves to be punished.
Right. I needed to punish him. But what we kept showing up for each other like, God, we can't stop seeing each other. We can't stop texting each other. We can't stop having dialogue around what this is. So what really came forward for us is that we needed help from somebody outside of us. And because of the work we do in the healing world, I felt very strongly called to reach out to someone I've used before as a spiritual counselor, Michael Hayes. He's kind of called the counselor of the counselors, which I love. And his, I think, specialty for me is past lives. Yes, I said it, past lives.
Okay, so hopefully we didn't lose too many of you on that.
So I have called in the past Michael and said, hey, I'm having an issue with so-and-so. And I just give the name. And he doesn't do a past life regression on me. He just says, oh, here is the past life you experienced together. And he also does energetic healing and clearing, and he works his magic during the session. And it never fails that whatever story he tells of the past life is the exact same pattern that's playing out in this life. And for some reason, just knowing what that pattern is instantaneously allows whatever I'm feeling about the person or the situation to just dissipate. It's the most amazing thing. It's like just the knowing of it or the understanding of it allows me to let go of the anger or the hurt or whatever it is. So Rico and I decided like enough is enough. We need to figure out what this very strong bond is that was kind of driving us crazy. I mean, it was making us feel crazy because it was like the love felt so strong, that it felt painful for both of us.
And there was a boundary issue too, because you really needed to make sure that you were caring for yourself and you weren't throwing yourself back into something that was fluid and had no commitments around it anymore.
Absolutely. Which was tricky. And I don't know if we always did it great or not, but we're still here. So yes, we're still here.
After all these years.
Yes. So we had a session with Michael, and in the past, Michael's given me like one past life, and it was like, boop, done. He gave us 4 past lives that were so big and so powerful, at least for us, that it cracked something open, I think, for both of us, like a very strong knowing of, okay, everything's going to be okay. Whatever's happened has happened. And it's happened really to bring us to this moment of understanding.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, if he hadn't cheated, we hadn't gone through the separation, if all those things hadn't happened.
Well, if you hadn't been a bitch that one day.
Oh, yeah. No. What? Why are you bringing up my stuff?
I'm sorry. Just trying to even the playing field.
Thank you. I'm sure Rico will appreciate that. But it's like all those patterns that, okay, so we have present day patterns.
So let me just say one thing. You guys called Michael Hayes together. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So he had you both in the quote unquote field. Mm-hmm. Okay, you guys, I'm pushing you out to the edge now, but just stay with us. So he had you both in the energetic field so he could feel what you had done together. Mm-hmm. And that gave him access to giving you the information about how you were connected and what the issues have been.
Right.
Life to life to life.
Yes. And the interesting thing is Rico and I had already had a discussion, even like 2 hours before our session, of here's this pattern, here's this pattern, here's this pattern, here's this pattern. And both of us were like, this is why I'm struggling with you, because you're bringing up this thing, this past trigger. Okay, so we already had that knowledge of the present day patterns.
Can I ask you a quick question? Mm-hmm. So for somebody who's listening who doesn't have much basis in past lives, would you have been able to say, well, that could have come from this life. It could have come from a situation with my mother or a situation with my father. Would you have been able, almost like you had the past life stuff, and because that's part of your frame of reference, it makes sense to you. Mm-hmm. But even if you hadn't, would you be able to find something that had been held in this life, something that had happened with another person that would make those issues dovetail so you would feel that sense of connection to him, like the same issues are happening?
I mean, maybe some daddy issues in there somewhere, but
maybe it just brought those to the surface in this life.
Maybe, but I don't really feel like it has any tie to other people right now.
No, I get that. I get that. I just wonder, somebody else might be able to track it like, oh, I have an issue because of, and it'd be something in this life. I'm just curious.
Yes, I think the patterns definitely are multi-layered.
And they're replaying in this life.
Right.
But now all 4 of them are happening at the same time.
Right, and we have certain people who the connection is so strong that it forces us to deal with that pattern. So I've dealt with these patterns probably in other relationships.
Right.
But because maybe the attraction wasn't as strong or whatever, the love wasn't as strong, then I just gave up on the relationship, whether it was a friendship or family or love relationship. I would just give up going, I'm out. It's not worth my time. Well, this relationship was obviously had such a strong physical bond. And I'm not even talking sexual bond. I mean, yes, there was that too, but I'm talking a physical. I mean, you saw me. I was like crying for a month going, my body physically aches because I'm not in his presence. And I'm like, that is ridiculous. I'm a grown-ass woman. What is wrong with me?
She is a grown-ass.
I'm a grown-ass woman. Why in the hell am I like physically in pain at not being around a man? Like that, I beat myself up over that for a while.
So can I say something? The word that keeps coming up for me is roots. It's like this thing has four layers of roots that are way down into the past and way across your life. So this thing is actually meant to bring things up and kind of open you up and tear it all apart. So it's easy to see why that's happening.
Yes. Absolutely. And if the challenging thing hadn't happened, the roots would still be down there. No one would be pulling at them.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, that makes sense. So just so people can see, there's another level of intensity in this coupling of the two of you, whether it's romantic or anything else, but there's a deep level of coupling between, wow, we've been together a long time.
Yes. And so I'm going to quickly go through the present day patterns because I want the audience to know how much we worked on these patterns in this life, talking about them, understanding them, forgiving them.
The two of you.
Yes. And still we were not able to clear it. That was the reason we needed more help. So one of the patterns that he came forward with that he actually discovered in school was that I reminded him so much of his mother. We're both Capricorn. We showed up for him in the same way. And I think really he got caught on the Capricorn part. And he was like, I felt like you never could see me, love me, or be there for me. He goes, I know that wasn't true. I know you were there. You did see me. You did love me. He's like, but the feeling I had was you couldn't do that. And so there was that pattern. And then there was the pattern of, okay, we are so physically attracted and bound to each other. So there's this love relation bond. So here we have kind of this mother-son thing. We've got this lover bond. Then we have our spiritual practice that we do together that has been insane with the things we talk about, the meditations we do together, our way of being together. It's very spiritually connected. And our conversations are mind-blowing. And we always get to some really higher level understandings and awarenesses when we're together. So it feels like a very holy union in that way. And then the last thing is he is a little bit older than me, and I have always felt this sense of protection in a way, like fatherly figure or safe. And I say that, I'm like, how did I feel safe after all that happened? But there was an essence of
safety.
Someone older, wiser, like safe in that realm. So when we get on the phone with Michael, the first thing he says is just like, whoa, okay, here we go, guys. Like, yes, this makes a lot of sense. And we basically just said, we're struggling. We're trying to figure out our purpose together in this lifetime. And we're trying to figure out what this thing is between us. So the first life that Michael told us about was, this is going to get weird.
It's going to get weird.
So
Stay with us.
Yeah. I was the mom and he was the son, and we were very close. He was like, I don't know, 5 or 6 years old. And the father killed me in front of him. He witnessed it. And so the trauma in that lifetime is this mother who, like, the karma pattern is this mother who was taken away from her son too early in life and kind of makes this vow to, I will never abandon you again. I want to be there for you. I'm going to find you again in time and space and make this right and be there for you. And also a lot of guilt in the mom's mind of, I'm a bad mom. I'm not able to be there for you, right? In the little boy's mind, it's, how could you leave me? How could you abandon me? How could you leave me here with this man who
is so dangerous?
And then having to spend his life in a traumatic experience, with somebody he doesn't feel safe with. So that right there made us have the understanding of, oh, okay, that's why when he sees me as his mother, it's so scary to think of being in relationship with me on 2 different levels. 1, I'm not going to be able to love him and I'm going to leave him. And 2, if I love you, you're going to die. We're going to be separated. So it's easier to just sabotage the relationship right off the bat and not have to experience that pain of loss.
Yeah, that's clear.
Very clear.
Yeah.
Second life was, and of course, the romantic side of me was like, oh, this is my favorite life, because it was, we were husband and wife, very much in love, very much looked upon from the community as like someone to look to. Like, I'm not saying that correctly, but we inspired other people. They wanted to be like us because we had such a big love. We also had a lot of children, and it was a very beautiful, loving relationship. And I was stoned to death for my mystical powers. So obviously it was during a time when
you just keep dying.
I keep dying, right? Yeah. So there's a lot of loss involved, and there's a lot of like, well, no wonder in this lifetime when we find each other, it's this gripping feeling of like, we don't want to let each other out of our sight. And yet we also don't want to fall in love because then shitty stuff happens, like someone gets hurt and dies.
Yeah, you're going to get stoned to death. How do you feel about that?
I'm going to get stoned to death. He's going to be left with all these children to feed and take care of, and he's lost the love of his life. Wow, that sounds like a good time. Let's repeat that.
I'm pretty much understanding why he would do anything not to repeat that.
Because remember I kept telling you, I'm like, all he keeps saying to me is, you terrify the shit out of me.
That's
I would always be like, what does that mean? And he's like, I don't know. It's like, he would say like, I love you, and yet I'm terrified of loving you. And then it kind of made sense here.
Yeah. So take us to the next step.
Next life would be, we were both monks together.
Nice.
And Michael was very clear. He's like, and you weren't lovers. And we were like, okay. We were just monks, and we were older men. And even though we were monks, we both had mystical sides to ourselves, and we were the only two that could talk about it together. So we would have private conversations and on topics that maybe weren't okay during that time. So we really found comfort in each other having a friend to talk about. So, of course, in this lifetime, no wonder within a week of meeting each other, we are doing intense spiritual meditations and work together like we've been doing it our whole lives.
Yeah.
I mean, normally I would never even open up my spiritual practice to include somebody else.
Yeah.
I would keep it very private. And with him, it was just like, here, let's put prayer shawls on and sit in the middle of the living room and like, like go to these places. It felt normal. Even though I had never done that type of spiritual practice before, with him, it felt normal. And then the last life is this life of, he was the grandpa, and I was like a 7-year-old girl, and we adored each other. We were best friends. And he always supported me and encouraged me to do things that everybody else in my family told me I couldn't do. And so it was a very sweet relationship. It was a silly relationship. We teased each other a lot in that relationship. And, of course, it was very painful when he died. And then she's left with the rest of her family who can't see her. And
she's only 7.
And she's only 7, and she's grieving, and she's lost her best friend. But this lifetime that was discussed, really, for me, what I heard in that was, oh, no wonder I've had such a resistance to him being older than me. There was this piece of me that was like, I don't know, you're 9 years older. And 9 years is not a big deal, but for some reason it was bothering me, like, you're too old. And now I see why. Yeah. Because you're going to die before me. I'm going to be left. I'm going to be abandoned. So it's easier if I just don't get into a relationship with you, and then I can save myself
all that hassle.
So
it's interesting, as we reflect on this with our audience. I hope we still have it all there. I hope it's at least interesting, if nothing else. We've talked about the time and space continuum and space-time and all of that. We just want to remind you that, we don't actually know where a past life resides. It might be a simultaneous life or something where all the energies are coming together across a space-time spectrum. So we're practicing being aware of the things that make sense rather than be understanding the story. For Krista and Rico Suave, I love that. I love it. For them, when they heard these stories, they had roots in their bodies and they could feel that made sense. If he had been someone that wasn't tuned in and he gave them a different story, we wouldn't be having this conversation, or it wouldn't make this much sense. Mm-hmm. So where we're asking you to filter this is through your own body and your own heart. As you listen, does it make sense? Oh, I can see how that would bring these forward. And then these two people can heal together and create the very next thing that's going to happen, that they don't have to keep carrying these stories with them forward.
Right.
Still on our team? We're hoping so.
Yes. And so the understanding that I think we both came away with was just like a deep knowing that we still have work to do together. It wasn't, yes, we're meant to be together for the rest of our lives. It's, we have some work to do right now to clear. And I think he was really wanting more information on, am I part of his life purpose? Because the story he was telling himself when he was at school is, she's taking me away from my purpose, because he was so wrapped up in me prior to school and so like, what's the word I'm looking for? So
Immersed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We were both codependent.
He just didn't have his boundaries.
Neither one of us had boundaries. We just threw ourselves
into
each other.
It is that first flush of love.
It is. And so in my mind, I was just like, oh, that's the first flush. He'll come back from school and we'll settle down and go about normal life. But that's not what happened. He took that first flush of love and was like, oh shit, here I am doing my same pattern of throwing myself into somebody else's life and giving up my own needs. And it scared him.
Well, he's used to abandonment. That's his story over and over in his lifetime. So he has learned to abandon himself. And that's the thing.
And it's my story too.
Yeah.
And so what happened? He abandoned me, right?
Yep. And then you abandon him.
Right.
Is perfect. And I think the thing to notice is it doesn't really matter if the past life exists. It doesn't really matter. What really matters is what is the resonance of the healing that needs to happen.
Yes.
And both of you have this resonance around abandonment that forces you into this tight package together and then spits you out and then forces you back. So that's where, and I wanted to say that at the point that you had this conversation, you were not stable as friends. There was tons of volatility. And to even do this together was a huge leap of faith on both your parts to say, okay, we're going to more committed to our healing than we are to our story.
Yes.
So we're going to go try this out and see if it gives us any insight, which it gave you lots.
Because we were not doing it in order to get back together or to continue on a relationship.
Right.
We were doing it because we were both suffering. And we were like, we couldn't figure out why. Because we had talked about our present day patterns and we were like, we understood them. And yet they still weren't clearing and they still weren't releasing and we were still suffering.
Yeah. Yeah. Brilliant strategy. Go to the next level.
Yeah. And so then, okay. So actually that was the first level, is understanding these past lives.
Mental.
And so we sat with those for a couple of days, and we actually ended up going to the hot springs together one day. And as we were walking onto the hot springs, I had this just feeling of, oh, here we go. It was like I felt the spiritual portal. I felt that spiritual portal open up right here in the valley, and we just fell right into it. But even driving onto the property, I looked at him, I'm like, ooh, something big's about to happen. Like, I just knew it.
I
could feel it vibrating in my system. So as we're walking down the path to the hot springs, I felt as if it was him and I and these 4 past lives walking onto this property together. And I was like, oh, here we go. And each pool we got in at the hot springs felt like I had an experience or a vision of one of the past lives. And I won't go into all kinds of detail on it. The most important part is, as we walked off the property, I knew we were only walking off with 3 lives. And I was very sad. And I got in the car and I was like, wow, I'm really feeling a loss right now. And I'm grieving. And I feel like one of the past lives is loosened and dissipated. I don't know which one yet. And I was like battling in myself, like, please don't let it be the husband-wife one. You know, there was that romantic part that just like didn't want it to be that. And then later on in the day, I had a big awareness of, it was the mom and son life that went, phew. And I was like, okay, I'm okay with that one. You know, here I was judging it, trying to like manipulate.
I'm trying to manipulate it.
I'm
trying to figure it out.
It totally was.
I'm just going to hold on to that little romantic lifetime.
And then we had another experience at my local watering hole where we were talking with someone, and there was an unexpected healer that showed up and went right to the spot on my back where I'd been experiencing a lot of pain recently. She started doing a healing on me. Then she moves on and starts doing a healing on him. Him and I are both shaking. Our bodies are shaking. We're like, what is happening?
Okay, we do live in Ojai. I just need to say.
I know, we're going way out there, but why not? What else do you guys have to do on your way to work but listen to these crazy-ass
wild stuff?
And it felt so normal. It literally felt so normal sitting in this bar with this lady obviously pulling the roots out, and I just start crying, and I looked at him, and all I could see is the grandfather's face in him. And I was
wow.
I was like, oh my God, he's leaving the building. And I couldn't believe how sad I was over that one. I was like, no, I don't want him to be the one that leaves.
You know what's funny about, so the place that Krista calls her watering hole is this very tiny, sweet, loving bar, I guess. I mean, it's kind of a bar, but it's really, I don't know. It's more like Cheers for cool people or spiritual people. Or there's a bunch of hipsters, people with beards and stuff in there. But it has this fireplace in it, and it always makes it feel like home to me.
Yeah.
There's something about that fireplace. And we're talking a very tiny space here. So there's not a lot of space to move around. But when you said that about the healing, I had this vision of a witch coming in to where her cauldron, like the space was actually held there, coming into the space and working with you guys in her space. Like, that's her space, not yours. You think it's yours. But she's like, no, this is my fire. This is where my cauldron is. And I'm working on you. And I'm clearing this right now. Anyway, that all just downloaded. Sorry.
And the fact that him and I were just open. We were like, okay, this is where we're going. We were just here to have a beer together and, I don't know, continue to talk things through. But apparently we're going to have Grandpa ripped out of the house today. So that was, okay, then we're down to 2 lives, right? And then him and I find each other on the beach together one day. And every time, like at the hot springs, I had a vision of him and I as husband and wife, and we were at the edge of the water there, and it was like we were looking out over a prairie, as if, like if you were one of the settlers, and you like walk over the mountain and you see this view, and you're like, that's where I'm going to build my house, right there, Like, I had that sense at the hot springs. And as we stood on the beach and we were standing there and he was standing behind me and we were just looking out over the ocean, I was like, oh, again, that sense of we were looking out over the view.
Expanse.
Yeah. And as I drove home, I was like, husband and wife just went swimming. They're done. They're complete.
Wow.
And that was hard. Because I was like, does that mean that there's no future for us in that capacity? So in my mind at that moment, I was thinking that once these past lives leave, that means that that part is no longer operating in us in this life. My understanding's different now. I understand that we were basically clearing the karma of why we would need to come back and repeat that in this life. So now I see that since the karma's cleared, now we have the ability to move forward and create something new without all of the story around it, without the neediness, the longing, the pain, and all the suffering that we were having from being in love together. That's not why people want to be in love, is to suffer. So if you're suffering, it's like...
But a lot of people do suffer in love. It's a curious question. So something to consider if you're suffering in love. Might want to wonder... maybe there's something for me to clear here so we could be together more peacefully.
Yeah. And so that leaves us with our monk lives, which I'm like, damn it.
That's not the one I want to
be celibate right now. Come on. But the interesting thing about that is, so through this process, which has been painful and lots of conversations, and some days we see each other, some days we don't, some days we talk, some days we don't. But we're really right now committed to friendship and we've been working on some work projects together that are in the spiritual realm. And so I'm seeing that oh, the monks are still operating right now. They still have something to do together. And I do think it's part of our work right now to assist each other in our next steps. So I'm trying to be at peace with just having a monk because, you know, the truth is I still love him. And I still am holding that there is some type of future. And I'm also having to sit in the no expectation, letting go, surrender this, and the knowing that when this monk life eventually clears, there might not be any glue holding us together. And we might have completed past lives and this life.
You know, Krista, it's so great that you're talking about this because I want to talk about the nature of love. You know, we have so much in our culture caught up around love being romantic.
Yes.
And that it's not valuable if it's not. You know, recently I've had an experience with someone where there was so much love and so much tenderness expressed in a connection. And then in a physical romantic connection, it didn't really feel right. So there was this breaking apart of the loving. And I kept thinking, but why would we throw away the healing and the loving that we shared so deeply with each other because there isn't a romantic piece? Like, can't I keep my heart open? And this is something I carry in my heart all the time right now is how can we keep our hearts open to everyone, no matter what kind of relationship? So even with people I know, some people I know feel like my children. Some people feel like my parents. Some people feel like my lovers. Can I just love all of them? Do I have to create different categories and silos, as we call them, and plunk people down, and then I have to put a boundary up? Like, what if I don't have boundaries until I actually know what they are needed?
The thing about boundaries is when you're putting up the boundaries is because there's fear there.
Yeah.
You're all of a sudden saying, I'm scared of...
I'm going to tell you what line you can't cross instead of, can I be present with how much I care about you until I feel like I've reached a place where I'm ready to say, this doesn't feel like a romantic relationship, so let's not cross this bridge together. Let's not be sexual.
Right.
But that doesn't mean I don't want to wrap my arms around you and hold you when you're sad and lonely. So let's be each other's healers still. Let's care for each other. Let's be deep friends. I have this thing that I posted on Facebook a number of times. I bring it up every once in a while, and it's all about being intimate with our friends. And how can we, touch each other more and care for each other more and be in each other's space as friends and not have it every bit of touch that we have be sexual.
I think that's the gift that him and I are getting right now. It's like we're getting to go back to square one in a way and start a friendship. Instead of how we met before, we meet, we go, we have coffee,
we all heard it,
and then we fall into bed together. Like, this is like creating the opportunity to really get to know each other on a deeper level. The stuff we've been sharing with each other has been so much more open and honest. And I could have cut it off. I could have said, you did this. No way. I'm never talking to you again.
Yeah, I could blame it all on you.
I could blame it on you. And I tried. And
I did for 2 weeks.
And honestly, another woo-woo thing is I really dove into the Course of Miracles, this book that both you and I read a lot of. And it just kept bringing it. It's like it wouldn't allow me to play the victim. It wouldn't allow me to blame him because it just kept saying, if you're blaming, you're not loving. And I just was like,
because the energy of loving is connection and the energy of blaming is fear and separation. And you can't have both at the same time. So you can't have loving in your life if you're separating. And
I was separating in order to protect myself because I was like, okay, well, I just told everybody on the podcast everything he did to me. And so now if I give him another chance or I talk to him and have these conversations, I'm going to look like a big fool when he does it again. Or if he,
he might. And he might do it again. That's your in the world choice. But you're doing the healing and the expanding of your soul and your consciousness. You're evolving your brain and your ability to be loving. Because the more we let go of our fear and our fight and our flight and our faint and our flee, the more we can be present with another person and the boundaries just show up. We're like, no, we're not doing that thing together this lifetime.
Yeah. I think the funniest thing is like we literally have started laughing these last couple of days. This is how far we've come in 8 weeks.
Yeah.
From like me fucking wanting to kill him to like yesterday. Like,
and yourself.
And myself. Yeah. There were moments where I was like, why am I here on this earth experiencing this? This is too much. It's too big.
And you're used to dying. You're used to leaving and dying.
Yes.
That has been your pattern. So staying is huge for
and
you.
playing this out and getting to the healing moment is huge. And 2 days ago, I just looked at him. I'm like, I'm actually laughing at everything now that happened.
That's great.
And it was such this moment of release because I'm not looking back at the infidelity and being mad at it anymore. I'm looking back at it and be like, oh my God, I literally made him come into this life and do that for my healing.
Yeah. So let's talk about forgiveness here.
Yes.
Because a lot of times we talk about forgiveness like, I'm so good and I'm so pure that I'm going to bestow my forgiveness upon you. And really what forgiveness is the dissipation of the energy when the understanding is received. When you really understand what was happening, what the other person was doing, what you were doing, how it all came together, there's no longer anything that needs to be forgiven. The forgiveness itself is no longer powerful. And then you feel compassion and caring. And the final thing that you just said is, oh my God, thank you for being my sacred soul friend who would bring this to me. Thank you for carrying your pain so that we could walk this path and heal this together. If we're never any more than this, we've both been given the most expansive, extensive healing gift that two people could ever give each other. What more do you want than that? Except maybe you do want more than that.
Yeah.
And that's okay.
Well, I'm open and I'm trying not to get attached to what the future looks like.
Brilliant.
And I'm trying to stay open-hearted. And yet I look at him and I just have this feeling of like, oh, you're my Jesus to my Mary Magdalene. And that's just what I see in him.
Oh, we're going to go there, are we? Yeah, we're going to go there.
Well, and it's not that I'm saying he's Jesus and I'm Mary Magdalene. I'm saying it's the energy. It's the essence of that relationship is what I feel with him. And we've had to have some very real human moments, and the rising above that and the being able to laugh at it from that higher perspective is like, I just feel like if I can get over that, oh my gosh, I can get over, I don't want to say I can get over anything because I don't want to call that my life. I had to stop myself really quickly.
Just slow that down, universe.
Yeah. But it's just, it showed me the how I can empower myself. Like, a similar situation happened to me a couple of years ago. It was someone cheating on me, and it was like, it took me 3 years to get that physically out of my body, the anger out, the hurt, and that was with me at the beginning.
You were still working on that during the beginning stages of this, as I remember.
Yeah, I mean, because it lingers. It lingers. It didn't have a grip on my body like it did in the past.
It would waft up, and you would feel it and experience it.
So 3 years that it took for me to clear that in that past relationship. This is 8 weeks.
Right, and then again, you have to realize that whole spiritual practice of when two or more are gathered, it's the two energies coming together, not rejecting each other, not separating, but coming together and loving and understanding. You see the gifts you're giving each other, and you celebrate the gift. Katie Hendricks, for some of you may know her professional name is Katherine Hendricks, and she wrote a book called Conscious Loving.
Love that book.
It's just the most incredibly beautiful book about partnerships and relationships. Just, we all had to read it at school. So Krista and I have this warm, loving feeling about that book. And one of the things she always says in her courses, and I've heard it so many times, is it funny yet?
Oh.
And that to me is like, when you look at the Dalai Lama, you don't often see that man crying. He's laughing. No matter what's happened, he's kind of half dancing when he walks, and he's sort of, he laughs. He has so much joy. And the point is that as we let go of these mental frameworks and these spiritual frameworks and these body frameworks, and we just let ourselves be free, we actually have tons of joy. And that's what you see in actual spiritual gatherings of people. You see tons of joy, and people freak out when they see it. They're like, okay,
it could be too much.
That's too weird. That's too weird. I can't do it. But each spiritual tradition has a way of expressing that. And for culturally, it's too much for us when it's the wrong one. We're like, whoa, those people are really whacked.
It's like seeing someone walk into the room. They're like, hi, everyone. And they're so joyful. And everyone kind of rolls their eyes like, oh, what are they so happy about?
Yeah, what do you want?
We're almost irritated by people when they're that happy as a culture. And it's like, no, we should all be walking around that way. And this last week of my life has really been the first week where I felt like I was starting to step into the happiness realm again. And that came from really just an understanding of him and I were both playing these, like throwing ourselves into these relationships and throwing like all of our own needs to the back. And there's no way for us to move forward in partnership together or with anybody else until we learn how to be in relationship and not have it consume us. And so for him, the consuming felt scary because it reminded him of his past relationships.
Well, he was going to lose you.
Yes. And for me, the consuming felt safe. So the consuming part was operating differently between the two of us, but it was still a pattern that needed to be cleared individually. So why would I not feel safe? That's where I have to go with the question. There's no reason for me, if I'm in my spiritual self, there's no reason to be scared of anything.
And I want to say this really, I'm so happy you just said that, because I want to say this really clearly, and it brings me to the Jesus and Mary thing, is that the meaning of that relationship, so my past life experience is a Jesus and Mary thing, huge, huge. I carried grief for so long, I never understood it until I had this experience where I was able to release the amount of grief that I carried in my past as Mary Magdalene with Jesus on the cross. And it was like it happened right in my body over a period of a week, and it was very intense. But what I want to say about that is what it brought to me, the learning that it brought to me, the teaching of Jesus is actually to live on this earth in your loving heart, which is heaven. So the whole idea of Jesus bringing heaven to us, bringing the man who was willing to live in his heart to the woman who was willing to live in her heart, and they lived their lives in physical bodies on this planet.
Piloerections.
Piloerections. Do you remember those from our earlier? Those are goosebumps.
Which means that resonates with me, whatever you're saying. It's
right. When we have a spiritual moment between us, that's what happens, is we both get this flush of... So just to allow yourself to consider that your lineage is so much from this same lineage. Our lineage has come through the same channels. So energetically and physically in many, many cases, why wouldn't we feel this same kind of collective energy? So when you can find yourself in your highest, holiest place and with your roots on the ground, your feet on earth, that's when your sexuality gets to be so delicious that you have physical climax and physical experience that is surrounded in this field of massive loving that lifts you up to a place that you've never been before. The teachings of Tantra is where people try to learn that and plod through it. It doesn't only come from that. It comes from two people who work through this healing together and then find their way into feet on the ground, eyes to the sky, and hearts connected. And that is the teachings that Krista and I teach, is that this is where we're going. It doesn't matter if you believe in our past lives. It doesn't matter if you believe in anything. Where we want to be on earth today is with our hearts open and our minds expanded so that we can handle love in any circumstance.
And with that said, one of the things that I can say today that I wouldn't have been able to say 8 weeks ago is that thing that happened with him in school is the best thing that's ever happened to me. And I'm shocked that I'm able to say that, but I see the way it has allowed me to heal with my past pattern of infidelity. And I see the way it stopped us from like the relationship that we were having was going to implode, whether it implodes 6 months, 5 years, 10 years down the road.
Yeah.
It basically took all that time that we could have spent chasing our tails and in upset trying to be in love with each other. And it just like slammed us with an experience, healed it in 8 weeks, and cut off the need to experience years and years and years of a painful relationship.
Beautiful.
So I just want everybody who's listening to kind of look at whatever challenging experience they're having in their life right now and really look at it and go like, how is this serving me? And am I capable of moving through these steps like Krista and Katherine have moved through in order to find my healing moment in order to live a better life?
Maybe heaven on earth. And
heaven on earth.
One thing I just want to say to this is there is no path of how this will heal. Mm-mm. The only way you'll know if it's healed is that you will be at peace. So that we're not suggesting that you always go back to the person who you've had a really hard experience with. We're not suggesting that you never go back. We're suggesting that you know as you heal what step by step. Byron Katie has a beautiful saying. She says, follow the simple instructions. What are you hearing that's here for you to do that's beyond some kind of frantic impulse or beyond some kind of compulsion to act and get a need met? What is it that's really deep inside you saying, I need to give this a week?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to say, let's see where it is then. But for the next week, peace, peace, peace. And so for you guys, for the next week, peace, peace, peace. We love you.
Thank you,
listening. Krista. Thank you for sharing your story. Share the love.
I thought you were supposed to spread it.
Spread the love. Spread your legs, share the love.
Okay. What? Love it. Bye.
Bye.
This concludes the Holy Fuck Soap Opera Week. We hope you have enjoyed the ups and downs of Krista's love life, as well as learned a little about what it looks like to spiritually grow through the raw, authentic, beautiful experiences of partnership. Katherine hopes to never hear another story about Rico Suave. Will she get her wish? Become a subscriber and find out. Go to holyfuckpodcast.com to get all the deets. Here's a Holy Fuck Up outtake for your enjoyment. And what finally came forward for both of us is your cat is...
My poor baby. I just want to make sure he's okay. Hairball.